Hello and welcome to your favorite thriller. My name is Jim Heskett and I'm talking today with R.A. McGee, which I'm really thinking is Reginald Aloysius McGee. Is that anywhere close?
It's actually Randall Thwaite Alexander.
Randall Thwaite.
Yeah, my Randall Thwaite's my mom's maiden name. So
very nice.
Yeah, not true.
None of that's true. So I'm here today. We've rebooted. I have brought this podcast back from the dead because I wanted to interview my friend RA from the SOTS podcast because I've already interviewed all the other regulars on the show when I was doing Your Favorite Thriller in 2019. So I'm not bringing this show back permanently, but just for a little one-off. And what I usually do here is read a little bit of the author's bio. So let's talk about RA real quick. R.A. McGee is the author of thriller novels, including the Porter series. He's a lifelong fan of stories and reading. He writes books that he thinks are fun to read with action, violence, and memorable characters. He lives with his ever-patient wife, who happily reads the first draft of everything he comes up with and waits supportively while he bangs his head against the wall, hoping ideas fall out. Together, they corral their small tribe of children who threaten to overrun them at any point and start a Lord of the Flies type society. Yeah, RA, I've got one kid, and I feel like that all the time, too.
It's coming, man. It's coming.
It's coming. So today, we are talking about your favorite thriller, and if it's still true, the book you said you wanted to talk about was Without Remorse by Tom Clancy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's tough to narrow it down to just one. But I think that's a great one, man. That's
cool. We're going to get into that in just a second. So first, tell us a little bit about you and your writing.
Okay. Well, like you said earlier, I'm R.A. McGee. I live in the mountains of North Carolina with my wonderful wife and my tribe of Lord of the Flies children. They're usually pretty good, man, but some days, dude, I think I'm gonna just walk into some punji sticks or something, walking down the hallway.
I hear you.
Yeah. As far as writing, I write thrillers that kind of span my main series is a kind of a lone type of character who goes into town and makes things right, when they're wrong. And the other series is kind of a mashup of 24 and the Bourne Identity, so a little faster paced stuff with more gunfights and shootouts. So that's kind of what I do, man.
Cool. Now, usually when I do these, there's an icebreaker question because I don't know a lot of these authors, but I know you, all right. But I'm still going to toss this icebreaker in here anyway because I want to see what you have to say to this. Do you have any crazy roommate stories?
Oh, man.
Anything you can share on the
air? Well, nothing good I should share, although I will say that the first house that I lived in when I left my house was with three other guys that I worked security at a nightclub with. So there was 4 bouncers living in one big townhouse with 4 rooms. And, we partied pretty hard. Once the cops came, and our dining room table was a big 9-foot dining room table was just full inch to inch of like bottles and cans. And, the cop came in and was like, you guys are really doing it up big in here, aren't you? He goes, I don't even buy the import stuff. And then he just kind of like walked around and left. So it was nice. It was a nice way to enjoy your freedom when you first moved out.
One of my college roommates and I had an apartment that was way nicer than either of us deserved to live in, And so we had like we had a balcony, and then we had a closet on the balcony, and we had nothing to put in that closet. As we're 20-year-olds, we don't have stuff. So we turned it into our dead beer storage. And after a year of living together, we went out and looked through all of the cases and added up how many beers we had drunk.
Yeah.
It was not a number that made us feel good. I don't know why we did that.
It's mildly depressing, to know what you're doing with your life, but you got to live it, man.
Nice. Let's dig into Without Remorse. So can you give us a spoiler-free synopsis or a little teaser about what Tom Clancy is? Because I've read a lot of Tom Clancy, and this is one I have not read, so I'm curious.
Okay. Yeah. So Without Remorse, if you've ever read Rainbow Six or some of the other Tom Clancy stories, there's a character named John Clark. and John Clark is like a CIA operative, and then in Rainbow Six he's Rainbow, he's Six, the head of the Rainbow organization.
Okay.
It's kind of a multinational soldiering force, so to speak. Well, Without Remorse is set further in his past, as he's coming, kind of out of the Vietnam War and adjusting to civilian life. And it's kind of his origin story into him, into his world, the kind of person that he comes, the kind of people that he comes from, the kind of person that he is. And, you find out that, his name's not even John Clark, it's John Kelly. For numerous reasons that the book kind of explores, he has to change his name later. So it's a really solid origin story for John Clark.
I saw on the Amazon page that it's they're making it into a movie with Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
Not a fan?
Yeah. I don't know, man. I guess we'll have to see. When I saw that, I was a little, I don't know. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything bad. I don't know. The screenwriter is Taylor Sheridan.
Okay.
And he wrote, I think, Sicario and like a few other movies. So I have a lot of hope for it.
Okay.
But, I hope that he kind of fits the character like I'm hoping that he does. And, I'll keep my fingers crossed, man. I'll be cautiously optimistic,
Nice diplomatic way to say that you're not into it.
In case he's watching, man. In case he's watching.
Michael B. Jordan, if you're watching, I've liked almost everything you've done. So
yeah. Well, it's just like in Black Panther, he was great. You know what I mean? But I had a hard time really buying the way that he portrayed Killmonger as an accelerated like MIT level graduate who was also a SEAL Team 6 guy. Just it just didn't ring true to me. You know what I mean? And I've seen him act in a lot of things, and so I know that it was kind of a choice the way that he played him, and it just didn't feel right to me. So I'm hoping it's a different spin this time. So.
I'm definitely going to cut this part out and title it, like RA McGee throws shade at Michael B. Jordan.
That's right, dude. He'll just be like, who is that guy?
So speaking not exactly of Michael B. Jordan, but can you tell us a little bit more about the hero? Is there anything you've left out? Like what really attracted you to this character when you were reading this book?
Well, so it was really one of the books that was kind of instrumental to me as a reader that I didn't really realize informed my writing until much later, when I kind of looked at it in retrospect. John Kelly, he's a principled guy. He's he's a good guy. He is the hero, but because of various things that take place within the story, he really gets his hands dirty. He really gets his hands dirty. And I find that appealing in a hero. That's the kind of people that I like to write. I like people that have a strict moral code, but it's their moral code. And it might not be what the reader would do in that situation, but I like people who are willing to get their hands and not have really lengthy morality debates with themselves. I kind of, I don't know if you ever, Malcolm Gladwell wrote this thing. I don't remember what newspaper it was for, but it was essentially about Jack Reacher, right? The Jack Reacher character. And he said something to the effect that, Jack Reacher is not leading us into a more civilized tomorrow, right? He's leading us back into the wilderness with the assurances that our psychopaths are bigger and badder than their psychopaths. And so that kind of always stuck with me. I think that the world is such a sketchy place sometimes that I don't want someone, I wouldn't want someone on my side who was golly gee Willikers, should I do it? I don't want I don't want Bruce Willis at the beginning of Die Hard, the first Die Hard, where they go through great pains for him to not kill someone. It's just the high rise is full of killer terrorists, and he's tiptoeing around, and You know, guy pulls a gun and he's dodging and he's ducking, and then the guy falls down the stairs, and that's how he kills the first guy. You know, I want a guy who's gonna be definitive and is gonna do what he needs to do to handle the situation. And John Kelly is that type of character in this book for sure.
So like John Kelly would have lit up Nakatomi Plaza. Is that what you're saying?
Everybody, dude. Everybody's done, dude. Everybody who's anybody is that's it for him, man. You know, and I like that. You know, I that's something that I enjoy as a reader, and those are the kind of stories that I write. So my books all kind of have, you know, that kind of central theme of, you know, it doesn't really matter the odds. You know, our hero is going to get into it, and you know, he's going to hit the gas when he has to, and he's going to make the bad guys really wish they hadn't have started any, you know? So
speaking of bad guys, can you tell us a little bit about the villain in the book without getting too much into details, without giving away spoilers? I mean, it's not a mystery, so I assume we don't know. I assume we don't find out the bad guy in the last chapter, right?
No, so it's kind of weird. I would have a hard time really coming up with like a big bad, so to speak, in this book. You know, there are they're kind of dueling plot lines. You know, one in stateside, you know, he's living in Baltimore, and you know, without really spoiling anything, you know, someone that he cares about is killed, you know, obviously. And so that kind of sets him off on this path, you know, of vengeance, so to speak. And then there's also a plot that takes place back in Vietnam. You know, he spent a lot of time in Vietnam, and they find out that there is a downed pilot over there in a concentration camp. And so it becomes crucial to the plot later that there are people asking him to come back to help them find this downed pilot, because he's familiar with the landscape and the layout, but he's also kind of juggling the stateside plot. So it's more of a you ever see Enter the Dragon?
I think so.
Lee? You know, and it's like he goes into the building, and then he fights the guy on the bottom floor, and then that guy's kind of down and out of the way, and then he fights the next guy on the floor up, and then he kind of works his way up to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you know, who leaves that footprint on his chest when he kicks him, you know, pow. You know, it's that kind of story where, you know, there are just kind of bad guys everywhere. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot more than one villain. And so it's kind of atypical that way, because I do think that a great villain is pretty important in a thriller, you know? And I think that's kind of what separates thrillers from mystery a little bit, you know? So I think that, you know, in mystery, you might not know who done it for a while, you know? And I feel like in thrillers, a lot of times you'll get that earlier in the story. And so then you're kind of working on a, you know, why done it, or, you know, how is our guy going to fix it type of situation. And I think that's kind of, Without Remorse is sort of like that. So
I think one of the things I like that's different between mysteries and thrillers to me is that in mysteries, you often, as a reader, you learn things at the same time as your hero. You know, like it's you uncover clues, you put things together. But in a thriller, often the reader knows more than the hero does, because the reader will get to meet the villain in a chapter, and then the reader's like, I hope the hero figures this out. Right.
Yeah. And then you get to live with that tension that the author's kind of putting in you, because you know that when, you know, your hero walks past the guy with the weird hat, you know, the guy with the weird hat is the bad guy, but our hero is a dunce and he doesn't know yet. And you're like, figure it out, you know?
Lisa Badger, we're recording this live. Lisa Badger says, hi, better late than never. Hey, Lisa. Welcome.
Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Lisa. We're talking about Without Remorse by Tom Clancy. Would you describe Without Remorse as a page turner, or do you like page turners, or is it more like a slow burn, and is that more your jam? What are you into?
Well, I kind of, you know, I'll kind of take it like I get it. You know what I mean? A lot of times, especially if it's an author that I'm familiar with, I'll kind of just trust that they're leading me where I want to go, whether it's a page turner or not. I would not necessarily classify Without Remorse as a page turner.
Okay.
Because you know, one of the criticisms I hear most about Clancy is how detailed he is about things. You know, so when you have John Kelly, you know, untying his boat and starting up the engines to drive to the island, he's gonna, when you're done, like, you feel like you could probably drive a boat, you know, because you know, like, oh, I got to take this line off and I got to do that, you know. There's a scene in the book where, you know, John Kelly manufactures a suppressor, a silencer, in his shop, you know, and so by the time it was done, you could tell that he really did his research, and he wants you to know that he did his research, and so that can feel in the micro that that's slowing things down a little bit because you're kind of reading things. But in the macro, I think the story is paced well. If you zoom out, things are happening at an appropriate clip. But if you zoom in, sometimes it's a little wordy sometimes. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of it. I wouldn't call it a thriller, a page turner. I'm sorry. I would call it a thriller. I wouldn't call it a page turner. Although there are definitely some chapters where you're gonna be pushed on to the next chapter to see what happens. So.
Like, I think if you probably cut about 75 pages out of The Hunt for Red October, it could have been a Jack Reacher book, maybe.
Exactly, 100%, 100%. Yeah. I mean, you know, if you the detail is incredible. I want to say I read a story somewhere where when he wrote The Hunt for Red October, he had like a government agency show up at his house saying, "Hey, how did you know all of these things?" And he said, it's all available in libraries and it's all, you know, not freedom of information back then, but it was all free to the public. He just did his research, and they were really surprised that he had learned so much about the subs and how they worked, you know?
I've heard that same thing too. I think it was like during the Reagan administration, they pulled him in and said, you know, how do you know this stuff? And he said, well, I read magazines and the rest of it I make up, or something like that.
Yeah.
And he just got it right.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's, you know, I think that's one of his trademarks. And I feel like that was something that he really took pride in. And so when you're reading those parts, you do kind of just have to trust that he's getting to the point, even if he's just feeding you from a fire hose sometimes, you know? So
with regards to Without Remorse, what's the one thing you think that makes it stand above other thrillers you like? What is it about this book that made you want to talk about it on the show today?
Well, I think that the way Clancy crafted the character, especially after I knew him from Rainbow Six, so kind of backtracking in his life, the way that Clancy presented the character, he's just impossible not to root for, you know, because he gets grounded very early in the fact that, you know, he's got a good heart, you know, he's a good guy. You know, he's willing to do things for people that most people wouldn't, just on the kindness scale, you know, but that he's also willing to really do what he has to do outside the law to make things happen. And I think that Clancy shows you early, based on what he did in Vietnam and based on actions that he takes early in the book, that Kelly is he's a very capable person, right? He's very good at what he does. He's very capable. And then something happens and he loses, like he suffers like a really devastating setback, you know? And so then once you know that he's so good at what he does and he's still lost, the rest of the book, you're like, well, the odds are raised exponentially because now there are more people that are after him. There's more people that he's after. And if he couldn't get it done when he was at his best, how's he going to do it now? And so it really sucks you in, and it makes you root for the guy, you know?
Yeah. If you get a book where you know the hero's going to win, but you still believe that it's not possible for him to win as you're reading, you know, that's a great book, because you're like, I know this is going to end with, you know, everything working out, but I just don't see how it could.
Exactly. And you know, I think that a lot of that's, you know, really, you know, it's like really character, you know, it's really giving you a great sense of your hero put in the crucibles of some of these plot induced problems. You know what I mean? So it's good stuff, man. It's really good stuff.
Are you a big Clancy fan, or do you just like this particular series?
I'm really not. I've read Rainbow Six and I've read Without Remorse, and that's it. And I think I've got 3 or 4 of his books on the shelf, and I haven't taken the time to get into them because I know that they're substantial. You know what I mean? Like I know that there's a lot going on, and you have to devote your time to this book. And I haven't done that, but the 1-2 punch of Rainbow Six and Without Remorse, I think is really superb from Clancy.
Nice.
I really do.
What other kind of stuff do you like to read?
Man, I'm all over the place, man. I read thrillers, I read mysteries, I read a lot of supernatural type of stuff. You know what I mean? When I was younger, I liked a lot of Dean Koontz's stuff. Because it's just kind of weird, man. I read pretty much anything I can get my hands on. I read, I just anything that strikes my fancy, I go for, because I'm kind of like a free range reader. I'm kind of like a free range, television watcher. And I kind of have distilled my writing focus into thrillers because they're kind of what I enjoy writing the most. But I'd love to take a crack at all kinds of things. It's I think that you can always find good stuff if you're willing to kind of open your eyes a little bit.
I'm exactly
horizons.
I'm exactly the same way. I probably read more. I write thrillers, but I probably read more science fiction than I do thrillers. Yeah, I like to read all kinds of stuff. Now let's talk about your book. What book of yours would you like us to know about today?
Well, I think probably the second book in my main series of the Porter series. It's called Moving Target.
Oh my goodness. How about that? Look at that.
Right man, there. Dude, you're Johnny on the spot with that thing, man. I like it, dude. I like it. It's my first book, I enjoy my first book. Readers seem to enjoy my first book. And I think that my first book in the Porter series skews more mystery.
Okay.
You don't really know what's happening. You don't even really know who did what they did or if this person is missing or why they're missing, and the audience is unraveling things like you mentioned earlier. They're unraveling things as you go along. And then with the second book, the very first chapter, I show you who's missing, I show you who took them, and I show you why they took them. And then the rest of the book is, the hero trying to figure all those things out, and potentially, save someone's life. So I think that it's definitely more thriller than mystery. And so I think it's like a perfect fit for people that like thrillers. I think most people who like thrillers would enjoy it, in general. Maybe you don't like my writing. That's a different thing. But the plot wise, it's structured as a really solid thriller. So
nice. Can you give us a little teaser about the plot?
Yes. Sentences? Yeah. So Porter's our hero, and he gets a call from an old FBI buddy of his, and the FBI buddy has a guy whose daughter disappears one day. Daughter disappears, and it's not a spoiler because it's in the first chapter. You find out that she's taken by a clan of meth dealers in the mountains, and so all the legal means have kind of exhausted themselves for finding this kid. And so, Porter's old buddy calls him in because he likes to work extrajudiciously. And he is the one who's going to put the screws to the people that he needs to find out where this kid is. And he's going to stop at nothing to save her. So
nice.
Yeah,
that is Moving Target, and I'm going to put a banner down here. Visit RA McGee. Well, on the SOTs we always say Ram McGee, but that is actually, it's not Ram, it's RA McGee. Reginald Thwaite. I forgot what you told me.
What did I say? Randall Thwaite.
Randall Thwaite.
It works for me, man. I'm gonna start signing things Randall Thwaite.
Lisa liked Moving Target. We're glad you enjoyed it, Lisa. I think we're about ready to wrap this all up. So if you go down there, let me switch this back here so we're not so close up. That's a little better.
I know my pores, man. My pores is a little too high def, bro.
I was like, I hope this is not in 4K. It was like, if you're listening to the audio, you have no idea what we're talking about.
And count yourself lucky.
Count yourself lucky. Yeah, you don't need to see us. I'm just kidding. Well, hey, RA, thanks so much for coming on Your Favorite Thriller. And you have any parting words of wisdom for the people?
Oh, man. Just read stuff. Read stuff. And if you don't like it, put it down. Never force yourself to finish a book that you don't like. So read it, read widely. And if it's terrible, get rid of it and move on to something else.
It's all right to DNF. Don't feel guilty.
That's right. Never.
All right. This has been Your Favorite Thriller. Thanks, RA. And I'll see you next week at SOTS.
Sounds good, brother.